In this week's episode of turning a shed into a cozy home edition, we are going to be working on building a faux beam, staining it, installing it. We're also going to be patching some holes and finishing up trim. This video is pretty much the last major DIYs that are happening to the inside of the new addition for now. This is huge that we are pretty much done. Crazy because it feels like yesterday we had just got the concrete poured and had the building being installed, and now we are at the point where we can move in. So exciting. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let's jump right in. Now, just a reminder, I do have an entire playlist put together of all the videos that we have shared regarding this project if you want to go back and check them out. If you're looking for something specific like trim or the flooring or the paint color, stuff like that, go back and check out that playlist. I'm sure you'll find everything that you're looking for there. But we're just gonna finish up the trim work really quick. I didn't film a whole lot of this just because it was a little repetitive after I had already done the laundry room space. So here I'm just going in with the two separate trims. I decided to do trim, the wider trim, the 4-inch, and then I did the small trim around the edge just to give it more of a finished look. I love the layered trim look here. This is optional though. This wasn't necessary. It was just something I personally chose to do. Also, I know the burning question is how much did we spend on this entire project? And if I'm being 100% real with you, I have not completely added up all the totals with tools included, so I will be doing that over the next couple days. And in an upcoming video, we're gonna do a new addition home tour, and then we are gonna be going over pricing, how much we spent, what I think, was it worth it, all of that. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm actually gonna try to post that next Sunday. Oh, and speaking of that, I have come up with a new YouTube schedule, which I will be sharing on my YouTube community tab, so keep an eye out for that. You can screenshot it so that way you know when my videos will be posted. Now, moving on to the wood beam. Okay, so basically what we decided to do, we have a 16-foot run and we wanted the beam going all the way down. But in order to get 16-foot boards, we would have to get those delivered, and it was not free delivery for us. Also, we didn't have a trailer big enough for 16-foot boards, so we decided to piece it together using 8-foot boards. So what we needed to make the one half of the beam was a 1x6 and two 1x4s. We just bought cheap pine boards from Lowe's, and we actually just built a box. And originally we planned on stripping them down and having them meet up seamlessly on all the corners. We did buy a table saw, and it was not good. It was really scary to use. If you've ever used a table saw and it was your first time, I'm sure you can totally relate. It was not our favorite. We didn't really understand how you get the board in there right to cut the perfect angle and run it through without the board lifting in some way, and it felt so unsafe. So we ended up boxing that back up and returning it, and I personally chose just to make a basic square. We did keep the 1x6 on the bottom so you can't see the seam from looking up. So right here you can see the 1x6 is on the top, the 1x4s are on the sides, and we're actually going from the 1x6 down into the 1x4. And that is how we got it nailed together. We used a ton of nails. Right here we just went through and got it all in place, and then we went back in and added a bunch of nails. Now, I personally chose not to use wood glue. In my opinion, wood glue is such a mess, and unless you are extremely careful, if you get wood glue on the side of the wood that you plan on staining, you have to go back in and make sure to sand it completely out, or it does not stain the same. I've tried it many times, and I have messed up projects by using wood glue. So I just opted to put a lot of nails. And then down the center of the room here, you can see the wood that's sticking out. We are adding wood to that wood, so that way we have something to attach the beam to. That's the best way for me to describe what we're doing here. We had to measure out the width of our beam, cut those boards down, and then Dylan went in and nailed those to the existing beam. And then here we are wedging our beam around our new little wood strips that we added. And that is how we are going to attach the beam to the ceiling and make sure it's nice and secure. Now, we already had to kind of wedge this in because it was a little bit of a tight fit. And I am scared of heights, so I was moving slow as snails on the ladder. It was probably annoying the hell out of my husband, to be honest, because he was like, he's so patient. He was being so nice. But I was like, scared to death, and I'm literally like 2 feet off the ground. I don't know what was wrong with me. But the good news is we got the first beam up and installed, and it was actually a little bit smoother than we expected. So we got that nailed in just to kind of hold it in place, and then we started talking about the light slash fan or chandelier that we're gonna hang eventually. Now, obviously, we don't feel like the beam is strong enough to hold a fan or a light. So we wanted to add extra 2x4s to make sure that we had something to mount a light, a heavy chandelier or fan to down the line. So Dylan's gonna add that and just kind of tuck in the wires there. We don't plan on adding that right this minute. It may be a year down the line before we get to that point. If we ever decide we even want to add a light, who knows? There's plenty of lighting in here as is, but that is always an option if we ever decide to do that. So that's why it is wired right there in the center. So he added that extra 2x4 for more support down the line when he does decide to add a light. And then now we're gonna work on adding that second beam. Now this one's a little bit more tricky because there is the angles there. And at first we were like, oh crap, how are we gonna get the two pieces together? But then lower one side, put the side with the angles in first, and then push up the beam. So I had to get down and move the ladder around, but we eventually got it.
You might have to move your ladder to where you can bring that side down. Let me get this in and then bring it up.
Good?
Yep. Off your side. Because we also need to go
towards you?
Yep, beautiful, right there. Damn. Beautiful. Now you need to go.
There she is.
If we can get it to me a little bit more.
Okay.
But I think that's pretty much it right
there. Right there?
Do you want to come look at it?
No, go for it. What it looks like. I can wood fill it though. I think what's it?
Turn that.
No, yeah, I think it's gonna look great. Once it's all wood filled and sanded. That part of this laundry room space that we're gonna add the beam to was easy as ever, just because it was one solid beam. There was no angles that were needed to be cut for this one. And we had already figured out how we were gonna attach it. So it took us like less than 5 minutes to attach this one to the ceiling. Popped a couple nails in these boards that we're actually gonna nail the beam to, and voila, beam is up and in place and it looks great. And then I'm gonna move on to testing out some stain colors. Now, I went through a million stain colors. I actually went to Lowe's, I bought some more, and none of the stain colors ever look at all like the samples that they have. They need to do better. I actually thought it would be a great idea for them to work with a DIY creator to test out those stain colors on actual wood that Lowe's sells, because I feel like the wood that they use for their stain samples is nothing like the color of wood that they actually have. You know what I mean? And every different type of wood stains different. So like this white pine looks different than if you were to use like a cedar wood and stain it. So I think it is important that they actually have good samples. I don't know, who knows, maybe I'll like show up to Lowe's and be like, hey, here's an actual sample of all your colors on white pine, which I feel like is a very common wood that people use to DIY with, because number one, it's cheap and it's lightweight too. So I don't know, maybe I can work with Lowe's and give them some real samples. But anyway, we're getting the wood beam in place here. This one was, I forgot about this now that I'm watching this video back. This one was a little bowed at the end on my side. I had to kind of pull apart the beam a little bit to kind of wedge it in. Don't be alarmed by that. I swear to you, wood at Lowe's, all of it's kind of crooked and wonky. You just got to roll with it and do your best. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. I am obsessed. So like I said, I did test out a ton of colors on the scrap pieces of wood we had, and I ended up going with the Valspar Stain and Sealer Mix in the color Ferret. This is actually a solid color stain, but I made sure to like buff it in so that way it didn't look solid. I wanted it to look more like a stain color so you could see the knots of wood come through, but this was the closest color I could get to like a good neutral that wasn't too orange, that still matched with the floors, but wasn't, like I said, too yellow or orange toned. So the Ferret color in the Valspar Stain and Sealer is what I used to stain the beam, and it turned out incredible. I love the color. So not only is it a stain, but it's also a sealer as well. So there's no need to go in with an additional clear coat unless you want to, unless you want that shiny look. I personally love the look of more of a matte wood finish, a little bit more natural look. So once I got the color picked and finished up the laundry room space, I taped everything off, and then I'm gonna wood fill the center seam, and then we're gonna get the whole beam stained. So the gap that's right there, I'm gonna wood fill that using the Minwax wood filler. Now this is stainable wood filler, however, it never stains the same as regular wood. You can actually go in with a little bit of sawdust and mix this together and use that to help it stain better. But in my case, I am actually using the sanding block to apply the wood filler. And then while it's still wet, I'm gonna like wet sand, kind of like sand the wood down. So that way, as I'm sanding, any of the sawdust is kind of like captured into the wet wood filler. And that kind of allows it to stain a lot better. So I applied it, let it sit for just a second, and then I go in right away with the sanding block and start sanding it so that way everything looks super smooth. If you see any of that darker tone, that means you have not sanded enough. You need to keep sanding until you don't see that. You'll see a little bit of that darker shade in the crease, but that's fine in my opinion. It's like the outer parts that you don't want to show. So yeah, I just sanded as much as I could, and then luckily, because I was using more of a solid stain, it actually stained pretty well, and you can't really tell that there's wood filler there, but you can see that there's a seam. I'm not even gonna try to sugarcoat that. There is a little seam, but it doesn't bother me. I'm not a perfectionist by any means, and if I wanted a complete seamless look, we should have went with a 16-foot board, but we didn't want to have to lift something up that heavy. I think it would have been really hard on our own, so this ended up working out in the end, and the little seam in the center does not bother me, but love the stain color. Oh, I'm so glad we did this. This turned out way better than I ever could have imagined. Alrighty, the wood beam is done. I do have a little bit of sanding to do in the center. I'm gonna let that fully dry though. I did want to stain the wood filler before it completely dried, just so that way it does blend a little bit more seamless when I do go to sand it and restain it. But I think it looks incredible. It matches the floors perfectly. I feel like I couldn't have gotten a better match. And now I just have a ton of cleanup to do. Get all the space cleared out, and I'm gonna work on painting trim. I did test out a paint color. Let me show you this. Right here, hold on, it's a little dark. This color is called Balanced Beige. I don't like it. I feel like it's too dark compared to the white, and I feel like it's gonna make the trim stand out, not in the way that I want it to. So I'm kind of thinking about painting all the trim the same color as the walls, just to keep it nice and cohesive and clean. But let me know y'all's thoughts on that. I don't really like, I don't really like the contrast with this color that I chose in here, and maybe I chose the wrong white. I went with alabaster, but nothing looks good for trim with it, in my opinion, unless it's just white. So, yeah, I don't know. Y'all could maybe help me out. I just don't want it to look too beige, you know what I mean? I'm already gonna be incorporating a lot of brown tones with my decor and stuff, and so I don't wanna put too much beige on the walls. I kinda like the idea of just creamy white everywhere and then bringing in pops of color. So that's kind of like my idea, but I'm always open to suggestions, y'all know that. Now we're gonna go ahead and patch this hole. Now I did buy this hole patching kit from Lowe's. It was absolutely horrible, so I used the patching mud, and then I actually found some tape that I had for a hole that I patched in my house, and I ended up using that instead. So the hole patching kits are complete garbage. It kept falling off the ceiling. I think it was actually meant for the wall, so that's probably why, you know, but it's fine. I ended up getting the hole patched. It looks okay, and that's all that matters to me. So now we're just gonna wait for it to dry. I'll be able to go in and sand it and then retexture the ceiling here and paint it, and you should never know that there was 2 holes in the ceiling. And by the way, if you were wondering why that was there, that was because whenever the drywall guy hung the drywall on the ceiling, a couple of the measurements were messed up where the lights were supposed to come down, so we just had to scoot those over, and it is what it is. I will say though, I do like this patching mud because it is color changing, so that's how you know that you're able to sand it, is when it's completely white. So it starts off blue and dries white. I love that. I think that's so cool. They actually have some spackling that is pink and turns white when it's dry. I don't know why. Like, how do they do that? Why does that intrigue me so much? I don't know why, but I really love this stuff. I think it's awesome that it goes from a color to white. But I got this hole patch. That felt great to get this done because those were an eyesore. By the way, there is one more like little hole in the ceiling, but that is for a recep that's gonna go up there. That's for when we do add lights around the ceiling, which we plan on doing down the line. So Dylan just has to put a recep up there, but don't worry, that's not an actual like hole that needed to be patched or anything. And I'm just gonna sweep and mop, get everything nice and clean, and then I'll show you guys how it all turned out. Like, I'm not sure why, but like, I kind of want to cry a little bit. Dude, this like took forever. I know. We can say we did all of it except for hanging the drywall, and we did a good portion of it. Yeah, this is. It looks so good. Alrighty, so the beam is done. All the trim is finished. I'm gonna walk you guys through and like show you everything that we completed. So, the beam looks incredible. I love the colors. I think it is like the perfect tone with the floor while still not being like too matchy, you know what I mean? I think it looks great. All the trim is now finished throughout the entire space, not just in the laundry room. We did clear out all the tools. The only thing left in here now is my little fan and heater, a rug that is for the space later, and then my 5-gallon jug of paint, which I'm about to go through and do some touch-ups. We did patch those holes in the ceiling, and then this beam is finished as well. By the way, for those who have been wondering and asking what these wires are for, those are actually more speakers. If you didn't notice, my husband really wants like a really loud surround sound. Not just for, I get it, it's for music too, like when we're outside like entertaining, we can open the doors and windows and you can hear the music, so I get it. But we have 3 large speakers on the ceiling here, and then 2 smaller speakers will go on either side of the TV. And that's what those are for. And then this hole over here is actually for a recep, so he's gonna install that. But oh my gosh, right? Like, I'm obsessed. There's so much room. It is so exciting. Like, I don't even know where to begin with decorating. I'm so excited. Like, there's so much I want to do, but also like I do realize that this is not a massive space. I have to be mindful of what I'm bringing in so it doesn't look too cluttered. But I think this is just a great space to have. It's like a little tiny house. I'm obsessed. I'm so darn excited. The laundry room's a little chaotic right now just because it is kind of like a storage room for like all the tools and things that we do have left in here. I do have my treadmill, weights. I've been working out a lot, so I like having that stuff available to me. Oh, this needs to be painted too. So once I paint, I'll paint over that so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. And I am gonna trade out my smaller treadmill that I used to use for this one, just because it is smaller. It'll work better for the space. So that's something I need to do as well. But you know, it's all a work in progress. But the beams I'm completely obsessed with. I want beams in my house, like now. I really do. And it was so funny, like yesterday I was telling Dylan, I'm like, I feel like our new addition looks better than our house. It's just because it feels so fresh and it smells so new in here too, which is exciting. I can't wait till the day that we can maybe one day buy some land and build a house. We shall see, but for now, we'll utilize what we have and make it as best as we can. Oh, and an update on our trees. They're all looking really good, and we planted grass seeds, so all the grass is growing in, and it looks so good out there. I can't wait for all of it to grow in. We planted some more seed like over here, but the trees are doing really good. And I feel like they've already gotten like a little taller. I could be crazy. They probably are not, but in my mind, they do look bigger. But yeah, it's turning out so good. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know what you think of the beams and the color of the stain. I could have always went darker too. Like we talked about that, like doing like a darker stain on the wood beam on the ceiling. So down the line, if I want to darken it up, I always can. I wanted to just try to stick with something neutral for now because it's easier to stain over something lighter than it is to take something dark and make it light again. So always start small, work your way up if you ever decide to change things. But yeah, it's looking good. Oh my gosh, I can't wait.